Hello, I am doing another one. Keep getting set up here. Oh, I gotta tell them. I am here. I'm just okay. We've got two people watching according to the software, and so I guess I better say something that's worthwhile. Good evening or good morning, whatever it is, because I realize one benefit to doing these really late shows, they're not shows. I'm not acting, I'm sorry to say it that way, but you know, it's just one of the benefits to doing this at this time is that people in England and can actually, you know, get up at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning if they do, and they have time, and the early risers can watch this too, or record it, or I guess that's not necessary though, because anybody knows that they can re-listen to it because it's posted up here on. But something about the spontaneity of being able to tune in, I understand. I like that too when I tune into something that's live. You know, it's. So anyway, besides all that. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to talk about, because I mean, I didn't actually write down the loose ends that I saw before. I got kind of busy with other stuff. If anybody has any questions, I would be glad to. Yes, hello to Xenoens. Is that like said as Xenones? Xenones? Or Xenomes? Xenomes? I don't know. I guess interesting. So let's see, what should I do? Okay, let me do that right there. I'm kind of a slowpoke. when it comes to this, and especially if I don't know. Well, that's where I, don't know what I'm going to say, but so I can just hem and haw here, right? Because there's so much ground I've already covered, and I could just start covering it over again. Or I can do what I always do to kind of get started. Anyway, it's a little blowing the horn. It's a little tiny horn, a high-pitched one, right? But I find myself while I'm playing, I've done a lot of street playing for hours, 5 hours at a slot at a time, so I got a lot of endurance. I switch between harmonica and saxophone and percussion, and then harmonica and percussion together. So it's not so boring. But I find myself going between light and dark, and then so I've started when I'm playing something light and even hopeful. It comes the time to where I just sometimes when I make a mistake, it makes a strange sound. I change it into something that's different from what I was doing, and I darken it then, or I do it on purpose to just change the mood, and then I start to try to play in a way that's kind of like telling a story. I mean, I'm not trying to do that. It just like I started to do there a little bit, like it was going somewhere. That's what I'm trying to project. And sometimes I'm playing like that, and I'm not even conscious that I'm playing the flute. Well, I'm a little stoned also, so I smoke a little weed once in a while, so that maybe accounts for that. But because my mind is moving faster than I guess, or maybe I think it's moving faster. Sometimes I wonder, if you just think it's moving faster, and you're really actually paying attention to details that are irrelevant or, waste of time, actually. Anyway, but I do a better job when I am focused on what I'm doing exactly, and then I can direct things here and there, and then bring them, darker light, and then you bring in the evil side, like what you would hear on like a heavy metal by using the buzz tone on the flute. Anyway, it's like, I guess it's painting a canvas. It's fun, so. And the people don't throw rocks at me when I do that. They don't throw rocks at me otherwise, but I have learned that when I talk on the street while I'm playing, you can almost feel the vibe that it's like the first vibe I feel sometimes is, because I tell stories when I play blues harmonica with my backup track, blues tracks, And so I ended up telling stories like when I saw the UFO in Texas after I joined the group. And so I guess, sometimes I get responses, that back from, I never really get responses from people that much, a few times, that came over and were listening and wanted to know what I was actually talking about. And, but sometimes it's just like, you feel like you're in a cavern, and not because of marijuana either. It's because it happens to me no matter whether I am in that condition or not, and like you can't be heard. It's like that even happens with music sometimes. I could play something that I think really had a lot of gusto, and then play it again at another time, even in the same day, and feel like I don't have it. Like maybe I'm just going through the motions instead of, maybe that's when I'm drifting, right? Into other thoughts. Or I'm watching something that's happening on the street while I'm playing. Anyway, it's, now that I'm actually, I do want to make a documentary. I was asked that question. And I want to put some fun in it, because T and O were not dry, and I didn't see as much of that with T there, but after T left the vehicle, more of it came out because Do was relating to us more often maybe, where the main lessons were all being established while T was here with Do, and so it was mostly serious, but I mean, it was lighthearted. It's not, and there was chuckling and stuff like that. And then once in a while there was like, hee-haw laughing kind of about some things. Like T one time I saw her laughing. The one time I saw her really laughing like out of control, I think she was tearing while she was laughing. It makes me laugh just to think about it. It was when we were talking about the Shroud of Turin, which was in the news at the time. Which anybody doesn't know what that is, that's supposed to be the actual cloth that was used to wipe the sweat off of Jesus' face when he was carrying the tree to where he was going to be put on the tree and murdered. So so she said she laughed about that, and she almost couldn't contain herself, and then she said. He said, because they're making a big stink over his snot rag. I don't know, she didn't use the word stink. She didn't use the word stink. She said, they're making a big deal of his snot rag, And that was typical for the perspective that T had about things. She would sum things up very quickly in very few words. And I didn't get a lot of things that she said. It was even something in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that came from the book of Daniel, which is interesting, that says these words that nobody really knows what they mean. If you look at what all the Bible teachers say about it, and it was like something tickle me Pharisee or something like that. And she used to laugh a lot about that too. I said that on 2 occasions where she went back, she referred to that. So I need to go back and pay more attention to what that was talking about, and try to, because I don't think T did anything after they awakened, especially when that's the only time I ever knew them, of course. I don't believe, because I believe exactly who they were who they said they were, and proved to me that they were, even though I didn't feel like I needed that proof. I didn't know I had the proof until after I left. I mean, because before then, while I was with the group, I wasn't thinking about whether what they were saying was true or not. Although I had doubts, but they didn't come in the form of "I don't believe you," or "I don't think that's right," or "I think you're wrong about that." Not then. I mean, that would have been, if I heard that in my head, I would have treated it like a demon. Because that's what it would be to me. Because even if it was, you know, I mean, if a human said something that was like a demon to me, I certainly would not treat that human as a demon. But I might not stay around to talk with that person. And, you know, if I didn't feel like there was a reason to, you know, because, and that brings up another thing we're accused of, the members of the group, of proselytizing and recruiting. But we didn't recruit in the common sense of the definition of that term, like compared to everybody else. I could say everybody else that I'm aware of. I haven't seen any examples of how like food and shelter weren't used, or advancement spiritually. I mean, yes, I can't deny that advancement spiritually was part of the package, but the way it's presented in all the other groups is like a theoretical kind of thing. And so it boosts the ego to hear that, to think of yourself as being, you know, above human, or one of the ones that returned from being with Jesus. Yes, there can be an ego with that, and I think I did have a certain amount of ego with that, and that's part of the reason I cheated on some of my lessons, which I talked about in the previous live stream, by just not following a procedure. I might as well say it since I brought it up, instead of making people go back to that, if there's somebody new here. It's a long story, but we had a procedure that if we had a nocturnal emission, that we were to feel no guilt about if we didn't stimulate it. That we had a procedure to go into the bath chamber, what we call the bathroom, and sign out a washcloth to clean ourselves up with immediately after we woke up by it, and hopefully we woke up by it, and so that used to get sent to Tiendo, and I didn't really even tune into that it was sent to Tiendo for some reason. I wasn't at the time. I wasn't. It didn't happen that often, but it probably happened 6 or 7 times over the course of the latter 10 years. Well, no, it might have. I don't know when it started, but it didn't. It was years, because we were in houses. It was at least 3.5 years, and more than that, probably like 4 years before I started having nocturnal emissions every. You know, what kind of conversation is this, right? They're going to make me adulterated now. And, but speaking about that, I could tell I got so sensitive because we were taught early on, even like in the first year or two, that we needed to actually control our thoughts about sexuality. Before that, they just said that there was no sex in the group. And they didn't specify what the kind of sex it was. Or with ourselves, or they didn't say anything about not being permitted to masturbate. And some in the very beginning in Wyoming in 1976 were, well, I wouldn't be surprised if some were masturbating, but I know for a fact that one couple, they were partners and they were a male and female couple, but they didn't have any relationship with each other, just crew members. And because we didn't have relationships, we didn't have no sexuality in those classroom at all. And so I found out years later that when the female told everybody about it, because she had never reported that to the whole class. She had reported it to Doe, or maybe even Tian-Do. I'm not sure exactly who she reported it to and when. So I guess it's possible that that could have just come out. That she didn't say. So I shouldn't add that in, because that would be sowing seeds of misinformation, since I can't actually remember that exactly. So I'm glad for that. However, got reminded of that. I'm glad that happens. But where was I? Since I lost track now because of that. Oh yeah, well they had sex in the tent where we were living in the Wyoming backcountry, wilderness, in Revelation 12. The first use of the word wilderness. The second word used as wilderness, I think referred to Black Hawk, which was the mountains, the mountain wilderness. A small community up just west of Denver. Sorry, I was thinking about something else related to that, and I gotta stop doing that, letting myself wander. And although sometimes it's good to do that, because I want to bring up more detail. So if that disturbs anybody, I guess it's part of tolerating me. Hopefully the information it does stand on its own. And that brings up something. Actually, I had a dream with June Odie in it last night. And let me go to it. I think I have it on this software here. Yeah, so I haven't had any dreams for a long time. Maybe even maybe even 5 years. I don't know exactly. Maybe 5, 6 years, 4 years. I'm not sure exactly, but that range, I think. That had Tian-Do in it. Or I mean, not Tian-Do, but a member of those that graduated, the students, or Doe, or students. Another time, I had probably close to a dozen or so dreams. I don't know the exact number. I never counted them. I don't know if I wrote them all down. But this one was with June Odie. Now, I don't think June Odie was in the first frame of this, because that's what it's like, scenes I get. And one scene was, which I think came first, was I was looking at a small outbuilding of some sort, like a garage that was open or storage room that was open, and but I couldn't make out what kind of a room it was. And inside the room, I could see there was like a dresser, like a furniture, a big brown piece of furniture. I do see color in my dreams sometimes, and although I'm not so good with colors in my vehicle, but so I. And there was something else that I saw with that, which I'm not actually remembering. I just realized now that I'm trying to remember that dream. But another scene was a boat that I kind of thought was like a canoe kind of boat, very small one. well, I don't know how to compare its size really because I didn't have anything to compare it against, but water was associated with it. I don't remember if I actually saw water. I think I did. I think I did. But it's not totally clear. But and then there was a scene that Junodi, maybe when Junodi showed up, then that's when I got another impression. And Junodi was there looking the way I remember in my brain's memory banks, my spirit's memory. Looked the same as she did, you know, right, as her memory, was overseeing the situation. But there was something coming from her that was a sense of concern, I'm not sure exactly, or like she was bringing some clarification or something. But I didn't get a strong message from her independently of the dream, which I have gotten from her before, actually, in dreams with her. With one other dream I had with Junodi early on, like 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And so then there was another scene about that time of three men, and I thought they were in suits, but I'm not actually sure if I got that right. That's how I remember it, that they were in, like, you know, penguin suits. And I think we're looking, and they were like looking for something. And I didn't get a good vibe from them. I didn't get like an evil vibe from them, you know, I mean, but whatever it wasn't something that well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly. Because now I'm starting to think that they were dressed casually, or maybe they were dressed differently. I don't know. I'm probably getting mixed up now about it. But in any case, it was three men. I didn't get the feeling any of them were women. So there were men as because men in the Bible many times is talking about Homo sapiens, you know, anthropos in the Greek, which is related to, I think, anthropology, which is the studying the humans. That's the word that's translated to man, you know. So end up getting the when actually the higher interpretation of the word man, M-A-N, is that it's actually T was man, actually man that Adam was relating to. The Elohim are mans in that context. So humans are just like a shade of a man, the hue of a man, maybe even like a coloration. I'm not sure about that because Tien Do didn't say that I remember. I just got that idea one time when I was writing a song, you know. Well, actually, sometimes I would just start writing like, you know, like poetry kind of stuff, and ended up putting that to song, putting that to music, and you can see some of those things that I've done. Well, not the ones that I'm singing on, but some of the music that I did in the very early videos that I posted, the earliest ones I posted on this site. But back to the dream. Oh yeah, the other part about this dream was that I had the sense while I was in the dream that I dreamed this before. And this was the kind of dream that I woke up this morning and and I could just lay there and be engulfed by the dream, you know, remembering all the things I just told you. So I put my interpretation of the dream on here. So I wondered if, oh yeah, right, there was also a sense that I was investigating something regarding that that piece of furniture and whatever other object was there that I'm not remembering. You know, it was like I remember kind of like looking behind it or thinking about looking behind it, the dresser kind of thing, but I don't remember, you know, like moving it or anything, or I didn't do anything like that. It was more of the thinking about what it was. Also, I was thinking about what it was, but with a sense that it's what I possessed, that it was mine, so to speak. And so anyway, oh yes, another thing that was in the dream was that I also had the impression that I was in the FBI, but not the real FBI, but that was used just as a way to cue me into being that I was investigating something. That's what I was talking about. I was investigating, and I didn't read that. I don't know why I didn't read that. It was the last thing on the dream that I wrote down. And I think it was related to the three men in the suits. Not saying that they were FBI. I don't know about that. It's possible, I guess. Anyway, so it wouldn't be far-fetched that the FBI at some point could be interested in what this vehicle and mind are saying about Tian-Do. Because as Tian-Do gets more and more mainstream, which I don't know if they'll ever get, you know, totally mainstream with it appearing more than a little blip in some distorted fashion on the mainstream news. But then again, I might be wrong. And you know, I mean, National Geographic did it, but they didn't, you know, tell the whole truth. They told the story that everybody else was telling the whole time, except they added what I asked the producer to add. If she didn't use any of my tape, I asked her if she could just use this one thing and just suggest or pose the question that was this the second coming of Jesus? And she said it in the introduction that was given for it. And I don't know if it's still in there because I can't find it. But that was in 2008 when that was on the air, I think. It was filmed, my part of it, in 2007 in the fall, I think it was. But and then they said it in the body of the in the documentary that was done. That was named let's see, National Geographic's magazine, I think. The final report, Heaven's Gate, because they did other final reports on other subjects, which it wasn't the final report. It was the final report by them, because then we had some more after that. But whenever you say something absolute, whenever someone else says something absolute about something that is kind of obvious that they're not in control of, you can be pretty sure that they don't see the whole picture, and that, you know, there's something about what they're presenting that isn't the whole picture, because they're seeing things in a certain way, you know, that spirits don't exist, or a level above human doesn't exist, or everything is a mythology, even though all that exists. because it doesn't exist. The next level doesn't exist in a way that it's been made to exist by even the Christians and the Jews and the Islamics and the Muslims and the Hindus and the Buddhists, I believe, and those are the ones, and their sects. You know, I mean, some of the sects are different. SECTS are different. Like I noticed that Jainism, which is a form of Buddhism, seems to have more of next level information in what they're trying to adhere to. When I started studying Buddhism a little bit for the sake of this book, not this book, the book that I wrote. That book is free on my blog, by the way, and just search for this name. I'll type in here. T-I and D-O, the Father. Oops, I sent it by mistake. The Father and Jesus in quotes, because Tiendo taught that right from the beginning they said they were not Jesus. They said Jesus, they said actually in another place, was that I didn't know about at the time, was coming back during the seventh trumpet sound. No, during the seventh no, at the end, when they're ready to actually put the beast in the lake of fire, which I've talked about the beast a lot in these live streams, which is basically the you know, all the top echelon of the civilization, but really focused on the United Nations with the United States and the head of it, you know, kind of the head of the United Nations as the primary host, and the other beast that comes later, after the first beast is well engaged in its beastly mammalian behaviors and ways, predatory and all that, is where Brussels became the second capital or headquarters of the United Nations. So and that's in Brussels, and that's the seat of the second beast. The seat of the first beast would be District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Because this was the land in the United States where the next level planned to come back. And that's why they made it into a melting pot from all the other nations, fed people to this. And that's why they stimulated help for humans to free the slaves in the mid-1800s, or even started well before that. Probably the early 1800s is probably when that started, maybe before that as well. I don't know exactly, but and then women's equal rights started about that same time too, which there was a big UFO flap in the early 1800s, and well, there was a UFO flap in the early 1800s, and then there was another one in the mid-1800s, and then another one at the end of the 1800s. I believe there were 3 UFO flaps, sightings, you know, and then of course there was, you know, flaps after that. But there might have been a break in the ones that, you know, that started in the 40s. with the contactees and all, because the next level doesn't do everything like in a linear way, a strictly linear way. Hello. So that's why all the examples in prophecy, like for instance, approximately like 3 different examples for every point that's a picture, you know, that has its literal translations. In other words, it's going to end up becoming something literal in either a word or deed, or both. In all ways, it becomes literal. And spiritual as well, in terms of the future, and in terms of the end, to the cycles, because we're in a big cycle. Tiendo taught that right from the beginning, that this human kingdom was a school, this civilization was the school, and when you get to the 6th grade, you're at the top of the school. Everything is going for you. And this doesn't have to do with time, really. I mean, because each generation has its form of getting to the top. Or each generation, let's put it that way. And so the lessons apply that that's what takes place during the first 6 grades. And then the second 6 grades in this 12 grade analogy that Tiendo gave was when you were getting out, you were given the opportunities to get out of what you got into. So if you got into thinking of yourself as a big leader of corporations and businesses and whatever they were, whatever, or in the military, a king, or or a great musician, or whatever it was, an artist, architect, whatever it was, those things would be taken away from you by the next level. But it's always the choice of the individual whether to let it go or not when the opportunity comes to take it away. And a lot of times the natural disasters are what take it away, or deaths in the family that, it's an automatic system, an evolutionary kind of automatic way of evolving. Because when death happens, actually, if that spirit, that human became something good, then partially, because it's never totally until, it may never be totally while you're in the human vehicle, no matter what incarnation it is, in the classroom. And the overall classroom was threefold. It was called by trimesters. And it was, the first trimester was during the Moses and Jehovah and Aaron, and Miriam and others that were the primary, the oldest students, or because there is a sense of an age of a soul, but it's not a time sense. Because you get the same, Jesus taught this too, that you get the same reward if you come up to speed faster because you came after others laid the groundwork for it. As long as you made the headway, although there's a certain amount to be said for being able to sustain your disciplines, our disciplines, for a long period of time, because the vehicle will, it can be harder and harder sometimes to sustain them. If it becomes like boring or old hat, or if you're not putting effort to keep on growing, that's how it falls away and ends up. And so when you leave if you leave that that environment that's like a classroom where everything's new. Terminology is new for everything. How you do things is new, and you're under scrutiny by your partner. Not in a negative way, because we were supposed to, between one another, like Jesus said, we are peaceful and kind and tolerant and understanding and forgiving and accepting, wanting to accept what the other person has to say. I mean, want to at least examine what the other person has to say against us or against what we're doing. And that's what the procedure was for a partner to do, is present to the other person the things that they see in them that might not be the way Tian-Do would have them do that or say that, based on the lessons they had that Tian-Do gave before that point. Okay, now Tian-Do didn't give, a lot of lessons didn't come, but many years. Or maybe the same lessons came, but they came in different ways, so that you were repeatedly challenged with the same lessons, the same way people that are not in the classroom, Tian-Do's classroom, in the human kingdom, have the same kind of experiences. You're faced with a problem, and you make a choice, and then you get the ramifications from that choice, and sometimes the ramifications are like, wow, I wish I didn't make that choice. And so then you get another chance when you wish that, and then you start to put that into motion, in a sense, by like thinking, how can I avoid that? Because Tian-Do said that when we owned up to the things that we were missing the mark on, which is the real meaning of sin. So that can be anything that anybody wants to make it, in terms of what their goal is. When they miss that goal, then it would behoove them to, is that like from the Hoover vacuum cleaner? Oh, now I'm giving an advertisement opportunity here. But it would behoove them to come up with a remedy, is what Tian-Do said we needed to do for the slippage meeting that we had, where we told the whole group what things that we did that we were breaking procedure, or if we became aware of it. See, there was nobody watching us in the bath chamber, so nobody could actually see that I was breaking procedure. So I could be deceitful about it, but I didn't think I was being deceitful. But a little part of my mind knew that it was being deceitful. But I was letting that little part of my mind not be a loud enough voice to stop me from doing it, because I felt guilty that I had a nocturnal emission while sleeping, which was not against procedure. Procedure was that if you didn't do anything to stimulate it, like you use your hands or try to imagine it, having sex with somebody, or if you didn't do things like that, or rub up against somebody else and then imagine it, which did happen a couple times with a female that I know that was in the group, but I'm not giving any names out. Then as long as you didn't stimulate it, then Do said there was energy off the top. Tian-Do said this together, actually. They taught this at a meeting. It might even be on tape. Or it might have come before we started making tapes, because the tapes only started in like around 1982. And we had been going strong for 7 years by that time. I just realized that it was 7 years from the start. I'm sure I can look at that and find some well, yeah, I can see the application of that. That was, yeah, a lot of things happened at that period. That's when we formed that organization called Astrologics, which was an office that we rented in Amarillo, Texas, and we actually did astrology charts. I was one of the ones that did astrology charts for people, and not natal charts. But that started actually by Tian-Do. Before that, bringing in astrology books like from Alan Leo and horary astrology, which was the hourly astrology, and the kind of event astrology was okay to use too. We weren't allowed to use natal astrology, and we weren't allowed to do a natal chart on ourselves or anybody else. We weren't doing charts on other students, but we could do charts on things in the news or presidents or whatever if we wanted to. The horary charts, because the horary charts are based on asking a question, and so in a sense you can. It's interesting that what can happen with that can actually make it real. I mean, I know that from doing a bunch of horary charts and then doing progressions, I know that you can steer things a lot, in the direction that you want to go. And that's what you got to try not to do when you're trying to actually interpret a chart. And try to stick to the definitions that are given for the signs and the houses and the planetary signs, the planetary characteristics, and the positions and the aspects, which is the energy exchanges between those planetary. And there's no reason to believe that that can't have its value and a certain amount of accuracy. But he said that we were to treat it as a game, not as something serious, and that it does have its value. And we weren't to ask questions about becoming human. Because if we want to do that, then we might as well leave the group and do that with astrology. If we wanted to know, where am I going to find my next mate? Well, we didn't have mates in the classroom, so I mean, our classmates were friends, but even as friends, we didn't talk among ourselves. The past was blocked out, and when you had partnerships, it was the duty of the partner, if someone started talking about the past, to say to the partner, that's not procedure to talk about the past. Okay, and now that's very hard to do. When you're with somebody, you kind of want to be liked by them, when you're living with them, especially like in a tent, like I was. And sometimes I was frequently with a female vehicle, a student with a female vehicle, and one that I was even a little attracted to. My vehicle was attracted to in some ways. And so, did I want to actually tell her to stop talking about the past? Well, to be honest with you, I don't remember having to say anything to my second partner that I had, which was Chakoti. The woman the soul in the woman's vehicle that Frank, who was Andody, had joined the group with in 1975, having come from Edmonton. And I think from Edmonton. Or maybe it was Calgary. No, I think it was Calgary. So anyway, I don't remember ever bringing up anything to her. But I had things brought up to me, but nothing, big time. And I talked about it before, but I did tell somebody, I think one time, that I'm not comfortable talking about the past. I don't know if that was Destody or somebody else, Thursody. And while we were driving in a van, we were moving camps. That's when we were living outdoors for 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And That all started by talking about Jesus, that Tiendo said they didn't come back as Jesus. Whoa. That's the last thing I remember really talking about. I left that here in my chat room. I was about to type in the name of my book. Right now, I would look to somebody that the name of my book is Tiendo Da. For anybody that's not in the chat room. Tiendo, the Father, and Jesus. Okay, so that's the name of my book. Tiendo, the Father, and Jesus, in quotes, Heaven's Gate, UFO Two Witnesses. Because that's all the primary definitions or descriptions of those two vehicles from Texas, that what they became when the souls from the next level, the older member souls from the next level, took those vehicles over and woke them up. T woke up Doe. I've got a number of things that I can evidence of that. I've talked about them in the previous streams. I'll leave it at that unless someone puts in the chat room, a question or something. In fact, I'll go to the chat room right now. Well, no, let me finish this one thing here because this is my blog where my book is posted in 7 sections with that title in every section. So if you just search my blog for that, you'll find those 7 sections. And I'll also send you that through my email address. With a lot of other material, if you want, to SawyerHG, as in Heaven's Gate, at yahoo.com. Okay, we'll go back to the chat room now. Burger King farts. Okay, that's a nice one. Hello, everyone. Does Sawyer ever interact with the chat? Okay. Yes, I do. Maybe you didn't stay on here, though. He doesn't talk to us. Well, yeah, I go for long periods of time not doing it. But, yeah, I'm preaching, I guess. I think he just preaches. For the most part, I'm trying to tell people about Tiendo. And I do answer their questions, though. Yeah, thank you for that, Cub Dodge. Was there a representative from Tila before Christ in like times of Genghis Khan or before? Was there a representative from Tila before Christ in like times of Genghis Khan? Yeah, absolutely. According to T, who Doe considered to be his older member, who we're acknowledging in our belief is the same individual that was the father, was also Jehovah, and also was one of the Elohim. Was the Elohim that was as depicted by the book of Genesis that Moses wrote, was the Lord then. We're talking about as the Lord, the judges, the supreme beings, the rulers of the world, the creators of the planet and all its life forms. And that's not the only That's not the oldest member in the next level necessarily. And in fact, I know that T isn't the oldest member in the next level. Oldest and wisest is actually more, because you can not grow. You can spend a lot of time not growing. So it's not based on time, because time doesn't exist in the next level anyway. But there's growth stages that exist, and they get more and more advanced vehicles, and then they can even operate more than one vehicle at a time, all under their overview. I guess networking. That's pretty interesting. And an example of that, according to Doe, was T. And Doe said that T didn't need to bring her entire mind that had grown to do the task of taking over a human vehicle and waking Doe up. So, which is a very powerful mind to be able to do that. Just by meeting Doe, that's what stimulated it, and the timing of it. Even though she had a little prep from it for that event. But let me see. That's so the ones that were from the T law, which stands for the evolutionary level above human, which in the book that Doe wrote was titled How and When Heaven's Gate, the Door to the Physical Kingdom Level Above Human, May Be Entered. An anthology of our materials. That's the book. Anyway. Is that going to be now backwards on there? No, it should be just the way you're seeing it, right? There's a reflection on it, isn't it? I don't know if that can be read. But anyway, it's the reason I was pointing that out is because it's saying the door to the physical kingdom level above human. They didn't say evolutionary in this book. Because this was, I think they put kingdom in there to relate it to the kingdom of heaven, instead of using the generic terminology that they came primarily to show was not a religious organization. It wasn't religious because they didn't teach anything the religions were teaching unless they took seriously the words from Jesus, because those are the only words that they said in the four Gospels could be counted upon to be accurate, even though they might not be accurate 100%. They didn't say that, but I've seen that, and I know that Doe knew that too. I mean, not knew that too, because in the 90s when we first started to study Scripture again after being in the group for 10 years or so by then, and 12 years, I guess it was. Doe had us read scriptures at times, not read them, but one time he gave me a project because I was somebody that was studying the scriptures a lot, so Sorority and Logody, and because we were Doe was preparing us to go public again, was thinking about it. He didn't know exactly how to do it, how to talk about it, because he knew that the religionists were all using the Jesus terminology and everything, but they were missing how they were saying the same thing but in an updated fashion. And so didn't want to lose, wanted to appeal to individuals that had that programming of that being the highest truth, which I agree, and they agreed was the highest truth until Tiendo came. Okay, but what was the highest truth for the civilization? Well, wait a minute, let me get back to something in that question. And that is that T is the one who said to Do, implied at first that he would, at least in her writings, her early writings, she implied that, like she said in the book that was called I Can't Believe That, But I Must. I can't believe that, but I must. In that 2-chapter book that they ended up feeling like they threw away, but somehow I got it. They ended up saying that what if the returning Jesus came as a came as himself, as a he didn't say carpenter, but she was comparing it to came like a carpenter. I forgot what she said now. I got to go find that in those writings. You know what? I can do a search on it. Would you accept him? Let me just leave it that way right now. But I'll go look it up, or somebody can ask me about it again, and I'll go look it up. But, so in other words, insinuating that, oh yeah, a man from Texas. What if a man from Texas comes back from, is the way that he comes back when he said he's coming back? Because just like, are you going to treat him the same way as coming back from the family of Joseph and Mary as a carpenter? Carpenter's family. Because, they didn't think it was him then either. And T said that there were seven closenesses. And they said this, and you can read it in UFO Missionaries Extraordinary, that was written by Hayden Hughes and Brad Steiger, the science fiction writer. And they interviewed T and Do on 2 occasions, and wrote the book after the 2nd occasion. But it's an interesting book. It's very interesting. And it's got some documents that T and Do wrote in it. And in those documents, in one of those documents, towards the end of it, T and Do say it's like a statement, but not said that way. That the first closeness was Adam. The second closeness was Enoch. The third closeness was Moses. The fourth closest was Elijah. The fifth closest was Jesus. The sixth was them. And also Do. It was in 2 phases. First as them, and then second as stating that I'm the return of the same soul that was in Jesus in a new vehicle, because the vehicle's name was Jesus, not the soul's name. That Do has a, Jesus had another name before he was Jesus. Like he said, he existed before he was here. And he said he existed before Abraham too. And to say he existed was also saying that he was equivalent, he was in some ways equivalent to his father. In other words, he was an older member in the next level. although this was his chance to actually become, actually to have children, to give birth to new souls coming into the next level. And that's the way the structure of the next level is. So you have older members, they usher in younger members from the human kingdom, which is a stepping stone. It's not designed to work. It's not designed to be a place where heaven exists. It's not like, heaven on earth is disinformation. To think that there could be heaven on earth. The next level is going to make sure that it's not going to be, blissful all the time. There's going to be challenges. It's going to be difficult. Because that's how mind is built. It's like a muscle. As we make better and better choices to get rid of the things that we learn are toxic to us, whether that's in people that we feel are toxic to the direction we want to go in, understandable. If you're trying to conquer drug addiction or alcohol addiction or sex addiction, then to go back to the same people that you did those addictions with is suicide in terms of that addiction. I mean, suicide in terms of getting out of that addiction. And so it's the same thing with the whole overcoming process. Getting out of, you can be addicted to power. You can be addicted to religion. They become the saccharine. The religion becomes a country club kind of membership. Where you just say the Apostles' Creed. You don't know really what it means, and you're in. And you do a few other things. You get baptized. Sprinkle some water on your head, and you're in the door. And you're going to heaven as long as you stay there. And you don't kill anybody or anything. And even though Jesus said every sin can be forgiven, so if somebody even did kill somebody, that can be forgiven of them by the next level, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be restitution to pay for doing that to somebody else. It may even be that that's an unforgivable sin. I don't know. Well, I don't think so. Tiendo didn't address it any further than what I said. You know what? I'm going by what Jesus said, because he described the only unforgivable sin as blasphemy against the truth. In other words, when someone is saying something that is opposing, doesn't mean it's in doubt of, or questioning about, but is teaching somebody else that something that came from the next level is not true, when they can't know that it's not true. Nobody on the earth can know whether this planet was not created by living beings in a very detailed way over long periods of time, and they have multiple civilizations on their planets that they create to be made into gardens. So nobody can say that and prove that. Nobody can do that. And the only argument that people have when they do claim that, they can do it. They can make the claim, but it's not going to be an accurate claim. It's just like saying 98% of scientists say that humans are causing global warming. That thing that was put out from that little study that they did where they didn't say 98% of the climate scientists that we gave a questionnaire to because they had written all things about the climate and the environment in different periodicals and journals that were accredited. They didn't say that those were all, that's where the 98% came from, people that were already investigating the climate. Okay, well, I can understand why that would have a voice, to say, but it's misleading because they didn't say that in the title. And then, and you have to read the whole story about that, and a lot of times you don't get that story, especially from those little postings that people put together, on their Facebook pages. And and then people go and tell other people that, that's without knowing exactly how it happened. And without knowing that, for years, if you put the words climate change in your writings, when you were one of those individuals that was accredited for writing about the environment, you had a better chance of what I read was that you automatically got the grant that you were applying for. I'm not saying that that was 100% sure, because I can imagine that they could say nothing about really being related to humans. Maybe it had to show that the humans were, because that's what the Democratic Party wanted to happen. The other ones that stimulated the big push of it, even though the Kyoto Protocol was happening before that. So it actually started in Europe with the New World Order, which is the United Nations getting together, and which I think is in part enables, I think, all the climate justice demonstrations and everything, and the Paris Accords, and all that I feel is and they may all believe it, but it's all, and maybe it's not used in the way that I was suspecting it was being used, but I suspected that it was to talk about how to protect the environment from the changes, with the idea that asteroids have been coming closer and closer, even though that was 2000 when Al Gore, or maybe it was a few years later after Bush got elected, when the Supreme Court, the corrupt Supreme Court at that time, showed their corruption when they superseded in the state's sovereignty of Florida by ordering them to not do a recount. So that was a coup d'etat right there. So if anybody wants to actually look at when this all started, it was with the 2000 election, I believe. And there's, but actually it really started when Tiendo left, and the crew left in 1997. But it started even before that, because there was preparation for it even before that. The whole thing is preparation for it, because there's more than one stage. And we're in the second stage now, where it's the second harvest that talks about in Revelation 14. But it's not the same as the first harvest. Nobody's there's no need now or no reason now to lay down for somebody to lay down their life, thinking that they're doing it for Tiendo. Especially if you never had a relationship with Tiendo. If you had a personal relationship with Tiendo, I can understand still considering that, because a personal relationship. You were in the classroom with them. or with Doe, if you weren't with T. Like some of the ones that joined in 1994, like Carlin, for instance, it was Carl Odie, was. And then since Doe left the gate open, and even talked about what somebody might want to do, by laying down their vehicle, that's between them and Doe. And what Doe said is they should scream to the heavens, to the highest source they can reach, to know whether that's right for them to do. Now that, to me, would be a process. Somebody should be screaming to the heavens for what would be right to do for a period of time, so that they know they're not just taking a, and that's totally different from suicide in every other way. Although T and Doe were not against euthanasia, because they felt like when the vehicle, we were following Kevorkian when he first came out with that machine that allowed people to kill themselves. But what they said is when the vehicle is no longer able to learn lessons, it's of no value to the next level anymore. And actually, for the soul that's in it, or the spirit that's in it, they'd be accelerating themselves to get a fresh start with a new vehicle that can function better. Because we don't learn lessons if we don't live a certain amount of time. I mean, I'm not saying that children that die can't learn lessons in the process. I mean, just every animal learns lessons. I think mice learn if there's a trap somewhere and they see a dead body in the trap. They see that with their camera eyes recording that. They have memory. So, they know what death is, and they know what life is, and so that's a way of learning. Whatever that thing is that's got my friend there trapped, I got to stay away from. It might take them a while to get their mind ahead of their senses of wanting to eat that peanut butter. By the way, when T and Doe would kill a mosquito, they would say something like, "You're accelerating that mosquito." It was a little bit funny, but it wasn't significant. Like you weren't killing, it wasn't "thou shalt not kill mosquitoes." I can imagine that there's probably people that are probably saying stuff like that, to mock the "thou shalt not kill" commandment, to qualify to be in the next classroom, to abide by, to qualify to be in the next classroom, where it became, don't even be angry with your brother without a reason. And so that's why it's okay to talk here. But I'm going to get back to something on that note. I think I answered that question. Before I do, I'll go back to the chat room since so T and Doe, the father, I'm sorry, I'm reading my own stuff. Katie says, I must admit I'm fairly new to watching your streams, so I'm sorry if this is a silly question. But I was wondering if you consider your views religious or scientific based. Mostly scientific based, but reflected in all the religions. But not the religions as they are now, where mostly what's taught is dogma. Like, for instance, the obvious dogma is what Catholic Church does, with the statues and the robes and the pulpits and the and and the king is clothing, exactly what Jesus said not to do. Calling themselves fathers when Jesus told them not to call any man your father. Except it was the Greek word pater that was the parental father of the mother-father relationship of parents, that term, but not father in heaven, not implying father in heaven. That's what they're doing in the Catholic Church. They're implying that they're representatives of the Father in heaven, which they're not. Even if they're following Jesus' teachings 100%, they're not representing the Father in heaven. Well, let me put it this way. They are representing the Father in heaven at that point if they're teaching everything that Jesus taught exactly the way he taught it. But but their interpretation of it is what ends up becoming dogma, because they're needing to justify saying things to people so that everybody would join them. And eventually now it's led to, give them money. And so what Tiendo taught was that the religions are the #1 killers of souls at this time. But that they all can be stepping stones to next level membership. They said everything, atheism can be a stepping stone into the next level. Because all paths on the next level, even just seeking power or fame or becoming the best at this or that, or whatever the quest is, and it doesn't have to be the best necessarily. Being content with what we become is all what needs to be outgrown. Only if that individual recognizes the information from the next level as being their next step. It might not be for everybody, because everybody grows at a different point and at different times, even within their own lives. So there's an aspect to reincarnation that is happening here in terms of the spirit coming back, but every vehicle has its own spirit. And it's actually scientifically equivalent to the word mind. It's more is the word that Tiendo used. They didn't talk in terms of spirit. And so they called the kingdom of God in 1975, for the first 10 years, this is the way I was thinking the whole time, because we had no Bibles for the first 10 years. We had a Bible in our library, but we didn't do any Bible teaching, and Tiendo didn't quote the Bible, and they didn't have any Bible lessons. They talked about things that Jesus said in their own words, and they talked about things in the Old Testament in their own words. Occasionally, it wasn't that often. It was, maybe 5% of the things they said, in the course of any one meeting. Not even that sometimes. But they said that the reality of was really an evolutionary level above human. No, not an evolutionary level above human. Only the evolutionary level above human. And that's what Jesus was actually trying to teach. But he had to teach it in a diluted way. Maybe diluted is not the word for it, but he had to teach it in a way that was adaptable to the culture at the time. So he called it a kingdom. And then the Christians go and say that he didn't mean kingdom like, a king and a queen and or a queen and a king, and then the subjects of that queen and the king, and they say that what he was meaning by that is the authority of a king, the ultimate authority, which is true. Okay, the king in the next level has the ultimate authority over the human kingdom. But now we're talking about the older members and the older members, and then the chief of chiefs. The chief administrator was who Do said T was, and Do was his older member. the individual that brought him into the next level of membership. And they operate on like Star Trek kind of spacecrafts, but not even but even upgraded from that on biological spacecrafts. And they have physical bodies that they grow on a vine, like a plant. And they grow different physical bodies for different tasks. And they grow even remote control spacecrafts when they need to go to the sun, very close to the sun, because it would burn up the biological physical bodies that they grow. To be in a certain spacecraft and close to the sun. So so it's completely scientific. They talked about genetics and how you can change your genes, which when they started talking about that in the mid-80s, the mid-1980s, well, I wasn't aware of how much genetics was really talked about then, but I do remember that when I talked to a college graduate about genetics, after I left the group, and I was saying that the genes can be changed, the person thought that, no, that's impossible. You can't change the genes. Watch out for what we say is impossible. I mean, when I first started studying genetics, I recognized that, wow, each cell in the nucleus has like another little computer. That's called the combination of the genome and the histones and those antennae kind of things, the cilia kind of antenna things, like the communication devices, they're sensitive to the polarity and the electromagnetic, stuff associated with each cell and each molecule, each particle, and how the cell wall it breathes through, its interface with the fluids, and it's this intricate device that grows, literally grows. You know how amazing that is? Do you know how far-fetched it would be to think that wasn't designed? That could all come about by accidentally being subject to different chemicals, but though it does come about by being subject to different chemicals. But that's set into motion by individuals that are working with those different chemicals on planets and in laboratories. Laboratories can be as big as a planet. Tiendo said that in a movie that they said that they wrote the script for, most of it, was fiction based on the truth. In 1982, when they started that I was aware of, when they started it, when they gave it to as a project for 3 students to help them with. And they were illustrated, which you can see the illustrations on my Facebook Sawyer Heaven's Gate page, that depicted Pluto as the Earth Lab. And it showed a big, like, louvered kind of door, like those vegetable grates that you put inside a pot so that keep the vegetables away from the water to steam them. And that kind of looked like a door that was huge. I mean, compared to the size of Pluto in the image that was drawn, it was, it could allow spacecrafts that probably were hundreds of miles wide or more through this opening. And I don't think the detail of that was, I can picture Alodi, who was doing the drawing of that. He was a student of Tiendo in the group. I can picture him, giving Tiendo giving him an idea, and then he draws it, and then they would say, well, a little bigger, a little smaller, to fit, as he'd be asking. And so anyway, but I wasn't there though for that, so I could be wrong about that. But I do know that's the way they work together, though T and students work together, because I worked together with them on projects where that kind of a detail was attended to. Like even every word in the things that we wrote, and I also did some writing while I was in the group, because we were using that to explore going public again. And so anyway, so I'm trying to give context to all these things that I'm saying, because I think by seeing those things, it really does paint a different picture of what this group has been painted to be like, by the media. And, not entirely their fault, of course, because, they can't, they're not equipped to put this kind of a detail into things, especially when it's not popular. And of course, this story is not popular for anybody, even though it's being made into popular culture, which is good, because then it brings more people to see the truth when they come across someone like me that's talking about the truth, or the writings from, it's really when they come across something that T and Do said, even if it's in documentaries where it's depicted as they're saying something, and it's seen by a lot of people as a negative, but to the people that might have received a little chip, like a computer chip of help, to recognize something about it, they might be a little bit inquisitive about what Do said, and they may actually go to the whole video to get the context of what he said. And then, that could, so it's all positive. The next level makes a positive. T and Do said that they're experts, not experts. No, they did not say experts, because Do had a joke about experts. He said an expert was a has-been drip. A has-been drip. And an expert. I shouldn't spell it out. I'm sure people listening to this are keener than I am. I probably wouldn't get it right away. I didn't actually get it right away. So, but let's see, where was I? I got off track again. I forgot. Maybe it's not necessary. I can come back to it. So yeah, I go through these streams of, somebody said before, I'm talking for a long time, preaching, I guess, is what I'm doing. But there's no membership, there's no group to be a part of, there's nothing to buy. There's no paraphernalia that I'm selling, to identify, cups or, saucers, or I'm not selling any I'm not even selling my book. Hardly anybody buys my book. I give away my book. People give me the book back sometimes when I give it to them, which is fine. I'd rather have them do that than to burn it. You're welcome, Katie. Appreciate that. Will you be selling hard copies of the book on eBay again? Oh, I'm not doing it now? I'm on Tito Books. Lowercase TIDOBOOKS. I didn't know I was thrown off of there. But maybe I'll have to check it out. I'll do it another time. So thank you for that information if you know it. Let's see, what else? Okay, there's no more questions. So I'll probably go back to, I mean, I could talk on the science aspect a lot, but somebody has to be open to the science of the mind to actually hear it. Because, I mean, we all know that different concentration levels of thought have different hertz frequencies. So, and we all know that we form those frequencies into words that are then sounded as a frequency. So that's proof right there of a frequency network. I have a song that's called Frequency Network, but it doesn't do justice to the truth completely. You know, it just puts it into poetry form. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But if someone wants it, I can give them a link to. I think I got it posted somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe not that one. I have some others posted somewhere. But T also brought up frequencies as like a when they were talking about genetics and tuning into different frequencies and learning to see more of the frequencies that exist around us. And they didn't say exactly what we would see, but then later on, towards the end of the classroom, they did talk about how if we raised our vibrations enough, we might be able to, well, the next level might let us see them. Now, I didn't stay long enough for that, but some students did, as reported by the last one who left the group, Rio, in his book Beyond Human Mind, which is very expensive, and he's not promoting, and I understand. And I've included this story in my book, so if anybody wants to read it, they can go to my blog and search on the name of the book, and then search on Rio. If you go to my book first, and then search on Rio through that each document, then you might find it better. RIO, or Neody. Also search on Neody, which was the name that he took. I think it came from Neo, which means new, I believe, and forgot what, it's either Latin or Greek, I think. So anyway, what the experience was, I shouldn't, dribble off on that, but the experience that was talked about in his book was very valuable to me, because what happened was, they were in, I think, was it Yuma or Tucson? Tucson, Arizona, I believe it was. And or maybe it was Yuma. Oh, I'm getting mixed up now. But and they were living in a house at the time. I don't think they were camping. But then again, I might be wrong about that, because I wasn't with them. And three individuals say they saw a 4-foot being, or 3 or 4 foot being, that was white, that was like a phosphorescent white, described as phosphorescent, and they were, in one case, there were 2 beings, and one of those beings was looking at one of the students who was sleeping. I think Sam Modi. And, or maybe Sam Modi was the one who saw them looking at somebody else. And another one was saw them crossing the hall, the two individuals crossing the hall when they got up in the middle of the night. And the same as the other person that saw. So three different people saw three different scenes of these individuals, these two individuals that they saw. And Rio actually had a dream of seeing the same thing, and two other individuals had dreams of seeing the same thing. And the next morning, when they all woke up, number of students were all like whispering to one another. We always whispered in the crafts, so they weren't trying to hide anything. It could have been whispering about something that needed to be whispered about. I mean, that needed to be talked about. But it could have been just describing what they had been, reporting that to the overseers, for instance, of the group, reporting that. And then Doe was living in the same craft, I believe, at that time. I don't know why I think that, but and he came out and he started saying that we had a wonderful experience. He didn't say anything about if he experienced seeing them or anything, but the students saw them, so they had raised their vibrations enough to where, and see, that's what Jesus did, according to Tien Do, so that the disciples couldn't see him, because his vehicle that was put on the cross and killed, because the vehicle had grown, the mind inside of it, and it filled into the soul of that vehicle, grew to a point to where it created a metamorphosis of the flesh of that vehicle, changing it. Similar to the way a caterpillar changes to a butterfly, to where you can even look at it with the analogy that a butterfly can now fly, so it's not restricted to the same environment. It's not restricted to caterpillar ways anymore. It can, of crawling around. It's now set to the winds, and Jesus showed that by hovering into the spacecraft where he left from in the cloud, and also hovering over the sea when it was in a tempest, while there were waves crashing, and the disciples were afraid that they were going to be sunk. I believe that happened during those 40 days or so that he was demonstrating to them the functions of his new body. That he had a physical body. He said, my body is, I am not a spirit. He said, touch me. I'm eating bread with you. And yet he appeared in the room, and they don't know how he got in there. Well, I think he got in through the door. He might have went through the door. I don't know if he had the capacity to change the vibrations to do that, or he came in with them, and they just didn't see him. Which Tien Do talked about that possibility in our crafts, that there could be members of the next level that are physically there in us, and even a spacecraft that's physically on top of us, on top of the house that we're living in, and with members of the next level in it, but they know how to stay out of our way. And so they don't let us ever touch them. But since Jesus compared the birth of the mind, or the birth of the spirit, the birth of the soul, the spirit that's in the soul, into a next level mind, into next level membership, Jesus talked about that as being compared to the wind, and how you don't know where it's coming from and where it's going to, because you can't see it, and but yet you know it exists. You can feel it. If it hits you on the, I'm adding to what Jesus said, because he didn't spell it all out, but from the example he gave, to me it says that it exists, the wind, but it's physical. So soul bodies are physical. But they're a subtle kind of physical. Maybe scientists would call it plasma. I'm not that good with the sciences to know if that would match it. But it would be an energy form. It's actually got energy associated with it. It's not just like an image. But a discarnate is more like an image. But Doe actually called the discarnate, a dead human without a soul, as a echo. So this is after the spirit leaves the body. The soul leaves the body too in the death of the body, regardless of what the soul became. But the soul can become a lot more than the spirit can become, because it was a seed planted in that vehicle. But that doesn't mean that the next level can't give a seed to anybody they want to. So nobody is shorted. So there's no competition involved in who's got a soul and who doesn't, and who's growing their soul faster or who's grown more. And just because I can talk all this doesn't mean I have an advanced soul. Just because a soul might be a returning member of the human kingdom in the past where they got their first soul, because there's different kinds of souls as well, according to Tian Do. And there's a soul for a returnee that's not the same kind of a soul as somebody that's receiving a soul for the first time. And they called it a deposit. They make a deposit. And then the Luciferian space alien fallen angels, souls, they actually mimic what the next level does in depositing soul seeds into humans. By putting implants on humans, abducting them and putting on implants, and then trying to birth them with human eggs and sperm, to get new vehicles that they can then be like them, have the same, be a match for where they are in their soul growth, because they were souls that advanced into a degree of student level membership. They actually had next level vehicles grown for them, I believe, and but they hadn't completed the metamorphosis, and neither did any of Jesus' disciples until they just left just now with them having come back when the name is Tian Do, the Father and Jesus as Tian Do. So I could talk about this all, for hours, strictly in Tian Do's terminology, but that wouldn't help with the primary terminology. Although, I mean, they acknowledged right from the beginning that they were from the same family as Jesus, and that they were bringing the same information that he brought, but updates of it, updates of that information, and. That's probably what led that one person in the meeting, the first meeting I attended, to say from the back of the room, of a crowded room, "You ought to be shot." He said what would, if anything would get them killed, it would be, they're saying that when humans pray, it goes to where they are in the next level, where Tian Do are in the next level, in headquarters. They said they were from headquarters. They didn't say where headquarters was. But Do always said he was attracted to the Orion vicinity. And we were named, one of our little bunches of people, our little groups of individuals, because they sorted us into groups. One group was named the Sirius Group. That's the dog star that's in, I think, the constellation Orion. So, but they also taught that the next level, when they were ready, preparing for this next stage in the third trimester, put out the word, and maybe you'd done this even before this point, put out the word that they were coming back, and it was graduation time, and so that other planets where there were individuals that were equivalent to the Luciferian space alien souls in some way were growing or decaying, or going backwards, whatever the case might have been. But they were all given another chance to leave their existing bodies behind and go to the Earth on a spacecraft and be let out in the Earth's atmosphere to pick a human vehicle that they were going to try to take over to join the program when the older members did the same and presented the program, the astronaut training program, for the next level astronaut training program, or God astronaut training program, if you want to say it that way, even though God's a distorted word now. To become a next level member, to overcome the human condition, to or outgrow mammalian behaviors and ways. Because the only future that a human, according to Tian-Do, the only future that a human can reach and have is becoming a next level member. Because that's what the human kingdom was built, to be a stepping stone into that kingdom. And that the way that's said in the scriptures is a footstool. And that's why in Revelation chapter 12, Do was the footstool. Related to the moon, the lesser light, where T was in the woman's body was compared to being clothed with the sun. In other words, her soul was wrapped around that vehicle that was named Bonnie Lou Truesdale Nettles. So God came as a woman, is what I'm saying. The chief administrator of the planet that actually created this planet and all the life forms on it. Well, I'm not saying, I mean, it's not just one individual that creates the planet, because the next level doesn't work that way. They don't want. They're not looking to get robots. They don't need robots. That's why they make it hard. And that's why they allow the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls to exist and influence us. And then influence all the humans, and then all the discarnates that learn about their influence, then they become assistants to continue on their programming. They become little programs in the ethers. They're not physical. The discarnates are not physical. But they gravitate to the humans that they had relationships with while they were living, and to the same behaviors. They do the same things that they did when they want to do the same things that they did while they were in the human vehicle, and even if that's negative, and even evil, hurting people. If somebody died with that being justified in their mind, then they died in evil spirit. But that's not the same as and so therefore they'd be a demon, because it would be demonic to suggest to somebody to kill themselves or kill somebody else. Because the next level doesn't do it that way. They don't lead us towards completely overcoming the human kingdom by even leaving our body behind voluntarily, which the 38 did. and the 4 that left after did, I believe. Because they teach that you need that vehicle to learn lessons through, and that to commit suicide to escape those lessons, because somebody else died that you loved and you don't want to live anymore, or because your company went belly up and you couldn't face everybody, so you jump off the building, like was happening during the Depression, they said, and or because somebody was bullying you, or to get back at your parents because they were abusing you or in some way, or not paying attention to you, not giving you any freedom, or whatever it is, that people separate from their families, and even the separation from families that many young people go through can be seen as them growing towards the next level, because the idea is totally separating from the human kingdom eventually, and even being by yourself is part of not feeling you have to have somebody else to give you pleasure, or entertain you, or show you love, or because at that point you're able to derive all your love from the next level. I'm not in that place right now. I do need, I do feel I need, I do want, I do desire companionship, with other people. I don't have a wife or a partner, or I don't do sex anymore, but I'm also 67 years old, so some of it maybe is burned out of me, but actually I'm not so sure about that. But because I know I certainly have the desires in my vehicle. Desires that I didn't have for 18 years with T and Do. So I did learn about what it took to at least conquer the level of opposition that I had to work against while I was in the classroom, because T and Do regulated that, how much opposition we had. They would run influences away from us. Those discarnates that wanted to use our bodies to stimulate us to think about having sex and stuff like that, so that we end up masturbating and they can get off on us masturbating. For instance, that's an example of how discarnates use humans, and they heighten the actual experience. And so it becomes a bigger and bigger experience. But then we can get accustomed to each bigger experiences, and then we want more and more, or different and different. Keep trying different flavors of the same behaviors. And they're not bad behaviors. I mean, but the next level doesn't need those behaviors, and so you're not going to be able to be without those behaviors if that's a program in your mind. That's something that you do to have fun, or to show love to somebody else, or to make babies, or to I don't know. If you're somebody that's of the far extreme of it, to hurt somebody else in some way, to where even. The idea of screwing dead bodies and stuff like that, and animals, and it's like, yet that was talked about in the Old Testament. That wasn't right to do. And a lot of people know that's not something I want to do, animals, but how do they know that? I mean, what would be wrong with that? I mean, completely scientific. If everything developed the way they said it developed, as amoebas and stuff like that, what would be the danger of mating with an animal? I mean, scientifically, I'd like to hear somebody make a case for that, without being able to test, the genetics and the distortions that might happen in the genes from that. Because in those days when that commandment was given to not have sex with animals, they didn't have the ability to look in the microscopes and see how, and test how the genes were changing because of mutating, because of incompatible combinations. Maybe the sperm of a human can't even get into an egg of an animal. I don't know, but I do know that humans are playing with that right now. I'm not positive they're playing with human embryos and animal sperm, but I wouldn't put it past them. But I know they're playing with, I feel like I know, I mean I can't prove it, except by things I've read actually, and I actually heard on Science Friday, I think, also, which was an NPR broadcast, talking about the genetic engineering that they're doing and the cloning that I know they've been doing for a long time with the sheep and other animals, and I no doubt, according to Rael, that's what the space aliens knew how to do. That he was abducted by. They know how to clone humans, clone themselves, which in a sense, we are cloning ourselves when we have babies, because you can see the mother and the dad, sometimes more than one than the other, in the new child. So that's like making a clone, and but when they try to do it in through just by like taking the T cells or whatever cells they use from an embryo, I don't know if they've actually grown anything. Well, they might have, because the reports that came out of Dulce, New Mexico, do kind of match, which was supposedly from an underground base that was jointly run by space aliens and humans, where the space aliens were the lowest levels and the humans were the highest level. As the reports went, they showed like creatures in cages that were all deformed and did have like animal parts and human parts combined, and that goes back to the story of Atlantis that Plato wrote about. I think it was Plato, or maybe it was wasn't Socrates. No, it was Pleiadian. No, I forgot his name now. Or maybe it was Plato. Wrote about Atlantis, what became called Atlantis. I actually never read it, so I don't know if he actually used the word Atlantis in some way, in whatever language he was speaking to. I guess it would have been a translation to English. So I don't know, But I remember seeing that as a kid, that movie, The Ten Commandments, and they showed Atlantis in that. I think it was in that movie. And in that movie, then they showed that they had humanoids with noses that were pigs. And then, of course, you go back to the mythology, and you see mixtures of animal and human. So, how would someone imagine that when you don't see it? You know what I mean? If you're a human and you never saw something like that, if you're like a cow and you never saw even a horse, how would you imagine that that would, well, actually it is just another kind of head, right? And Tiendo did compare, they said the next level compared humans with horses. They said that humans were like, they weren't down on humans, by the way. Humans is a beautiful condition, but a condition to be overcome in order to become a soul in the next kingdom, that is much better than the human kingdom. They don't have wars. They don't have to eat much. They don't spend all that time eating and preparing foods and working for to prepare foods and transporting them and all that. They can do tasks for long periods of time without getting restored by even just a pill or a dosed or sitting under a light. I believe T was in her vehicle when they stimulated that idea with us, and certain kind of light, that the spacecrafts might actually emanate. Maybe I can imagine that. Let's say a really older member had to be of the ability to actually pilot a spacecraft that can be equally as large as a planet, for instance. Or let's say it's a planet that can transport. Well, no, let's not get into that. But I mean, Tino talked about that the next level can give a task to a crew to take water to a planet. And the example they were using was you don't stop doing that because you think that enough water was taken to that planet. You wait to be, you keep on reporting back what you're doing, and you keep on doing that task. And you may have other tasks at the same time. So it's not ever boring in the next level. And they do have downtime too, to where they have actually nothing to do, and they can just enjoy the music of the spheres and who knows what else they can enjoy. Just looking out the window of a spacecraft, enjoying just riding along, like the way we enjoy driving in the car sometimes. And got to get back to where I was. Or growing a vehicle that can then, now I forgot the point that I was trying to make when I was getting onto that. I know it's something I wanted to talk about. Well, let me go back to the chat room. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, then please put it in the chat room. The next level is accepting Jesus. Oh yes, 100%. The next level accepts Jesus. When Jesus is one of the members of the next level. The Jesus, not the Jesus of the current way that Jesus is talked about in the religion, Christianity. I mean, in terms of Jesus being a son of God, yes, okay, fine. But in Jesus, in terms of promoting, showing him your love and your connection to him by elevating the family, the human family? No, wasn't Jesus' mind. It was denying the human family. Doesn't mean you treat people badly, but and doesn't mean that you don't love your family members. No, that's all fine. That's all natural to being in the human condition. But if you think that your whole purpose or is limited to being a supporter of the family, Jesus said, well, even the evil do that. Even the evil love their own. So, and Jesus said that when he was approached by a disciple that was telling him that his mother and his brother, his vehicle's mother and his brother, were waiting to talk to him, or waiting to see him, or whatever it was, while he was talking to other people in this group, he turned and said, well, I don't know if he turned and said, I shouldn't ad lib. he said to them, said to that individual, that here's my mother and here's my brother and sister, or brother. Are these that believe that I am from the Father's kingdom on their benefit, for their benefit? He didn't say it in those exact words, but that was what he said. And so basically he was denying his self. He also said, to be my disciple, you have to deny yourself. So denying your family is part of denying yourself. But that doesn't mean that we should go out now and deny our family and say, I'm not, but if it's holding you back from growing towards the next level, which right now isn't an issue, because because Tiendo didn't elaborate on how that separation would occur, and that separation could even occur from individuals that never hear about Tiendo, who separate from the world. They go even start a militia movement, even though it wasn't supporting using violence in any form on anybody else, or even ourselves, beyond their exit choice, which was about the most gentle exit that you could imagine. They died in their sleep. There was no evidence of struggle, even. Among the last ones, there might have been something that happened to, like some fluids that might have been coming out of the mouth of one of those individuals' vehicles. But they were prepared for that, extensively prepared for that, and I'm witness to that. Over years, over the whole time that they were there, even if they were there a short time. And I can talk to that. I have many times, but I think I want to move on from that right now. Okay, I've got a question here in the chat room. You're welcome, Alaska. I'm not saying last names anymore. Well, Alaska Zoom, that's not going to be your real name, so I don't have to worry about that. But when I think it might be a real name, I'm not going to say last names. I'm going to say first names. The next level, my question is, why is it necessary to go to the next level? Is it right or wrong to stay out of the next level? No, it's not right or wrong to stay out of the next level. It's not like that. It's free will. It's our choice to move in that direction. And it's our choice to, let's say something happens, not right now, but let's say something happens in the future to any one of us. I think we're all gonna lose our vehicles. We're all gonna die. And the older we get, from my experience, the more aches and pains you have, and you wonder if those aches and pains are cancer, and so the fear of death, basically, you get prepared for. In most cases, I mean, some people don't, but I believe that people get like 3 chances sometimes but maybe not everybody. Maybe some people come into the world and even as a child, right? And they die as a child. So the next level, isn't looking at humans. They respect humans and they want us to treat each other like we would want to be treated. So that's a lesson. So that's, we all want to be treated with love and kindness and from everybody, unless, that can be distorted too, saying, doing to others as you'd have them do to you. You could say, well, if somebody was killing, if I was killing somebody, then I'd want somebody else to kill me. Which, okay, So they're going to get the same thing that they dish out. So, but that's the flip side, because that's not what Jesus was talking about. He was talking about appealing to the next level ways of thinking, to where the product of the garden was the soul, and the soul cannot be killed when the flesh is killed. And the spirit's not even killed when the flesh is killed. And a soul is a container that holds next level spirit, next level mind, next level information about how to become a member of the next level. So as we get older and it becomes easier to think, well, you know what am I afraid of with death? It's not like, I mean, they're not promoting death. You know, death isn't the answer. Death is just the final step, but to get to that step, you have to overcome, well, I guess you have to overcome the fear of death. And then you have to overcome doing things that can bring you to death that you don't have to do. And, you know, I mean, but then when individuals do things that are with the risk of death, when it's for somebody else's benefit, to me, that's evidence of the greatest good that you can do for another human. And so you know, like firefighters, for instance, in those World Trade Centers, those are all heroes. Those are the heroes. And not just the firefighters, but any of the police that went in there to try to help people, and, you know, and EMT people, whatever was happening. You know, they go into dangerous circumstances and where they're actually risking their own lives to save somebody else. Those are all people that are demonstrating, you know, that they're putting their standard, their love for God, really, even if they don't think about it that way. Because that wouldn't be the behavior you would see. You don't see it often in the animal kingdom. I mean, we don't know. I mean, there could be evidence of animals that are willing to you know, fight for another animal to keep the other animal alive. I saw a video recently that showed, I think, an animal coming to the rescue of another animal in the river, I think, was one example. A dog that went in and saved another animal in a rushing river. And they showed a big long video of it. But Tiendo said right in the beginning, in the early 70s, that all the kingdom levels were accelerating. All of them were advancing. So that's why you would see that. Because that's not the normal pattern that happens. You know, animals are pretty much self-centered and protective of others when those others are their young for a while. And protective of one another, like the penguins demonstrate while they rotate, which is really interesting, isn't it? Who's going to be subject to the worst weather by rotating towards the middle. So it's like, where was I again? I'm still trying to address this question about so it's not necessary to go to the next level. The next level does not need any of us. They live forever. I mean, their vehicles that they grow for them can be killed. as evidenced in some of those UFO crashes that happened in Roswell and Aztec and perhaps some other places, where they deposited the bodies that they had been grown for them by the next level. According to Tiando's teachings, towards the end of the classroom is when after he left, is when those started talking about that as a possibility until the very end, and he thought it was likely that they came via those crashed flying saucers. And then he also said that the Luciferians stimulated that too. But, so it's not necessary to become a member of the next level, but the next level makes the opportunity available to everybody in stages and different parts of the planet in stages. And so, so the question would come to Do sometimes of, what if everybody chose to go to the next level and they all left everything behind? Well, Do said, well, he said, well, I got mixed up with another thing he said at that second, because I was trying to get the context of exactly what he said. And he said, well, it would deplete the human kingdom if everybody chose to do it at the same time. And the next level doesn't want to deplete the human kingdom, because it's from the human kingdom that next level members can be born. So they talked about how animals can evolve into human families and actually evolve into a human baby, their spirit, which is their mind, their information, their programming. So like if, let's say a dog died, they use the dog as an example many times. Let's say a dog died when they were part of a family, and they loved that family. You could tell it, and they learned to be of service to some degree, you know, maybe. And if the door was open to the house or the car, and they didn't need a leash, they wouldn't go running off to run with other dogs unless their master said it was okay, you know. And when they grew to that kind of a love, to where they, you know, they might sit at the kitchen table, you know, as if they're they feel just like part of the family, and the family treats them just like part of the family, just at a different strata of development, a different grade in school, if you want to look at it that way, and or a different school that happens before the human school, and so that when that dog dies. Or I imagine even while the dog's still living, that dog will be influencing that baby with its behavior, loving behavior, you know, licking the baby, you know, playing with the baby, you know, all things that humans do as the baby's growing. And so it's influencing, showing that love that that dog has for that baby and their family, to the baby. And so the baby is then taught love right at that spot, in addition to the parents' love and their siblings' love, if the siblings were showing love. And so in that way, then it can be seen the same as if the dog died, because if the dog died while connected to a family to that degree, and I don't know what the degree would be, you know, the dog would probably still just do the same things that it did while it was with the family. And so that spirit, which is a program at that point, it's like an object that has, that can do and think everything it, well, not everything, because it can't grow, it can't change into except by going into a human vehicle, a new human vehicle. So that new human vehicle becomes the reincarnation, in a sense, of the spirit, as different from the reincarnation of a soul, which only the next level can do. Even though a soul can take over a human vehicle, but it's different than the way a spirit grows within a human vehicle. That's why it says, one of the things that I think Paul said, that there's only one spirit, or there's only one soul. I don't know which way, because the same word was used many times. I don't remember the context that he used it in, which is rare for me to want to quote Paul, but Doe quoted Paul sometimes, and T did also, and yet Doe had one of the students of Doe wrote about how Paul was looked like he was a charlatan, or like a contactee or something. I mean, he may have not known that, but he was used by the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls to start diluting and creating the religion, because that would steer people away from the truth of the next level. See, they could have, if they didn't do that, then the truth could have been taught to the degree that we know it now. Because you can go into the Jesus speaking and you can talk about the things that he taught, and Christians now will say he didn't mean that. He didn't mean hate your father and mother and sister and brother and sister and lands and houses, or where hate actually is a disdain for the behaviors that would keep them human. So those became negatives to the individuals that were that far along on that path. But they weren't negatives to the people that weren't in that school. Now, the next level doesn't limit our growth. So that theoretically we can even pass up the older members. So there's no competition in the next level. They don't hold competitions for who can, they didn't give any example. They just said there's no competition in the next level. But in terms of a comparison of our growth, there is a comparison, and that is the comparison between the younger member and their older member. Everybody has one older member that's the one that helped them become members of the next level, that birthed them into the next level, like Doe did to the 42, 38 plus 4. Even though some of those were going to have to come back, but to finish their overcoming. I lost it again. I think when I say that, as I get tired, I do it more. So let me go back to the chat room, because I know there's a bunch more questions in there. What do you think about the turn the other cheek teachings of Jesus? That was the lesson step that he was giving to show that the soul was more valuable than the flesh, to where you could even be killed, and the next level would see that you were abiding by their instructions, and take your soul and put it on ice, to say what Doe called like purgatory, or Abraham's bosom, or paradise, or even take it into their environment and give that individual a task to do, because they they were willing to lose their physical vehicle to follow that guideline. And that would apply right now to somebody that, if somebody tried to kill somebody and they didn't try to kill them back, I'm not saying that it would be wrong to, you know, he didn't describe what it would be right to do to try to stop that person from killing them, but it wouldn't be to just let them kill you. You know, I'd say run away if you can. But then you could get to the point to where you're ready for it. And Jesus was ready for it, and his disciples were ready for it enough to where they were willing to tell the truth, knowing that the same thing would happen to them, which Jesus said that would happen, where they would have to drink the same cup. He gave it as an instruction. You got to drink the same cup of my blood my bloodshed that I'm shedding for you, to give you the example of what you must do, what you must grow to do, because by showing me that, then you are becoming a new creature. And then when you come into the next level, we will take that little baby soul that has grown in the kingdom, in the human kingdom, and you will be viable to be born into a next level vehicle that doesn't operate the same way a human vehicle operates. It doesn't burn energy the way a human vehicle burns energy. You know, substance fuels. And it's got a lot more facilities on the dashboard. They called it like you know, we have the ability to tell ourselves to walk, right? Well, the next level has the ability to change the vibrations so that the individual could go, could disappear and appear, you know, to other humans, or to communicate with somebody else. They can do it with their mind. They don't need to have words anymore. So but they got that strength of will by adopting all the lessons in a gradual way through their development over the course of the civilization, over the course of 6,000 or 60, you know, whatever, 6,000 years or so, 6,100, whatever it is. I don't remember exactly. But because that's how long, and we don't, and it's possible that some of the ones that were born came from the previous civilization. We know that's where the Luciferian space aliens came from, the previous civilization. That's where they got their first wings, so to speak. But then they broke away. And so the next level is taking advantage of them so that other souls that are an equivalent learning position as they, and beneath them in terms of the schooling age, so to speak, are influenced by the Luciferian space aliens, all in degrees, kept in degrees so that they're not overcome by them, and in that way they can start to grow to learn to follow instructions, because the next level doesn't want crew members that cannot follow instructions. It's just like in a corporation. If you can't follow instructions in the corporation on how to do your job, you're going to lose your job. The next level doesn't want to wait to see that you're going to grow to follow instructions. They want to know that you can be trusted to follow instructions right away. So that's why one of the biggest things that was happening in the Moses camp was teaching them to follow instructions. Cut your beard this way. Only eat these foods. Cook it a lot so that there's no blood in it. It didn't really matter whether there was a practical reason for those instructions, but the way the next level does it, there is a practical reason for those instructions. They don't just make them up like humans do with tests. You know, let's make up all these tests and the word, you know, these questions, and then we'll determine that from that whether you're sane or not, or you're a risk for our corporation or for our investment or whatever. The next level does it by experiential opportunities, to where we're making choices on do this or not do that. If we do this and it turns out badly, learning from it and not doing it. We get trapped again, trying to learn from it and not do it. We get trapped again, trying to, as many times as we get trapped, the process is to keep on going. So anybody that's in that process as a human is in that process towards the next level of membership, potentially. But they're not going to get there right away. And so that's why it's in stages. That's why the overriding lesson that Doe and crew were relaying to us, to everybody that was left behind, in order to be kept by them, kept safe from them, safe from the recycling that's going to happen to the geography, the human kingdom, the spirits of the human kingdom, and the souls that are human equivalent space aliens. Tiendo called them human equivalents because they haven't overcome their humanness. But anyway, so then they take those souls and they save them or they put them in a vehicle that can be of some service in the next level with a crew on a spacecraft. And it can be like to even replace the jobs that were left by the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls. I'm conflicting, another in the chat room, I'm conflicted when it comes to self-defense. Yeah, I understand that. Well, Tiendo were very protective. So their self-defense was staying away from places and people that could do you harm. And, I mean, some people may see that as a coward, but it's not necessarily cowardly. If you're not in the fight, if you don't sign up for the military, then you're not going to be in the war. And so, people that, sign up for the military and then they leave as deserters, to me that's like saying, oh, well, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to die, okay? I don't want to die, but maybe I don't want to kill either. And I don't even want to watch other people doing it. So I'd rather, become a fugitive or even be killed by somebody else in the military, because that's what they used to do to deserters. They'd kill them. They'd hunt them down, as I understand it, in the old days. Or they'd kill them right on the spot. So it's like they were forcing people to kill other people, or be killed. And a lot of people, I think, shot above. Because if they were raised as Christians, especially like in the Revolutionary War and I mean, not the Revolutionary so much, but the French and English wars, to where they would line up against each other, and just march towards each other, shooting, and and whoever kept on going, whoever was left, and then, or the other ones ran away eventually, was the victor. And so I don't doubt that some people would have been shooting above them, in order to follow the Christian teaching that the soldiers were supposedly following when they were raised to be that way. But, so, I mean, self-defense can be seen in a lot of ways, but it doesn't have to be. Tiendo felt like it was primitive for humans to be making weapons that were designed to kill humans. Let me put it that way. But they weren't against hunting deer, so they weren't against guns. They were against guns that are made to kill humans. And of course you can say any gun can kill a human. Well, yeah, but both those pictures go together. And then someone said self-defense is different than intentional harm. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. And again, you know, these are stages, you know, because like in the first classroom that we all have to go through, and I may have to go through it again. I mean, when I say I'm talking about the soul that was either growing in this vehicle or was came back and took over this vehicle that might still be hanging around me to see if it can get control of the vehicle again completely. I don't know how that exactly works, whether I'm that same soul or still anymore. But the vehicle has its own mind, of course, and the vehicle's mind doesn't want to die, normally. And so the vehicle will have impulses of self-defense. And, you know, in order to abide by that procedure of turning the other cheek, you know, try to get away from it. I mean, turning the other cheek was what Jesus did. He demonstrated that. He didn't have to do that. So he committed suicide. That's what it is. It's committing suicide when you know that somebody wants to kill you. So yeah, it's natural to have problems with that. But if we let that stop us from going forward with the teachings that we do believe in, that they said, if, you know, if all of a sudden that's like a game changer, then that's our choice. And somebody might actually, you know, think, okay, that's a game changer. I can't stay with this group because they're talking about I've got to be willing to turn the other cheek and die because when someone's attacking me, and I can't believe in any kind of rightness about that, and so I'm not gonna. I guess they're not something that's really what, you know, I want. And that's fine. And then, you know, a week later, they may have an experience to where, or a month later, a year later, they may have an experience that all of a sudden they say, holy smokes, I would be willing to turn my other cheek now, maybe, you know, because that's what I did, in a sense. I mean, not to the degree that I was ever faced with anybody trying to take my life. But I had to be willing to lose my life to come back into talking about this. You know, working for TNO, knowing that whenever I'm talking about it, there's going to be people that are going to be against me, influencing somebody else to believe this way, and that if they don't want those people influenced, then I become a target. And that target starts as soon as I start talking about it. Because the target is from the unseen world as well. But the target is much worse when somebody actually knows me personally and knows where I am exactly. My vehicle is. That's how, So what happened to me, though, was after Tiendo and crew helped me recuperate some of the mind that I lost, some of their mind that I lost when I left, because you don't retain it if you don't use it. And I wasn't using it anymore. I wasn't trying to do anything the way I was learning it in the classroom when I left. And so, and even my leaving was a result, according to Carl Odie, who was there to hear Doe talk about it, was related to my choice, my failure to seek the help from them that I could have received when they took away some of the mind that I had, some of the awareness that I had, some of the recognition that I had of them. that made my strength. I didn't have the strength at that point then to fight off even the same demons that I had before. Demons being anything that was trying to win me to the behaviors that were not consistent with the kingdom, graduating into the level above human. So so when I got back to the place where I said to them in my thoughts, Tiendo, can I serve you and not leave my daughter behind, because she's a little baby. I mean, she's 2 years old or something like that, or 3 or 4, I guess. Yeah, maybe 4. Really, when I went through that, and the feeling, because I couldn't imagine it at that point with but I knew the formula was to leave the family behind, even though I didn't have to do anything like that when I first joined them. I had an easy departure from my past, and which probably goes to show the age of this soul that's with this vehicle, and that not as old as those other souls that had children of different ages. Well, not all of them. Was that it doesn't necessarily boil down to for all of them, because some left and only stayed for a little while, and they sent the kids to live with the dad, the biological dad, when they were living as a couple. That was Aaron and Judy. Aaron is on a documentary or two. I think he's in the latest HLN documentary that was done. I'm in that one too. But I got off the track again. But the idea of self-defense and growing towards in that direction, because that's not my direction. I mean, it is my direction because I choose to make it my direction. But I was describing what happened to me. So then some months, maybe even a year passed, when I was actually rereading and re-listening to tapes, and I was having a hard time of it sometimes. But I was also, because some of the things that Doe was saying to me, it just felt so bizarre. Because I had never seen Doe as powerful as he was, and which people see as insane as he was, but he wasn't insane at all. I know that, but I can only one can only prove that by starting to examine everything he was teaching in the context and everything that the students were voluntarily engaging in, like me, and so. I'm not saying that's the only way people can learn, So it's between you. What I suggest to anybody that, wants to grow is to just keep on asking the highest source they can reach in the distant heavens for help, to learn the lessons that they need to learn to grow closer to to them. That would be the way Tiendo first taught us, and they didn't teach us to talk to them, except when we were face to face. In other words, when we had access to them directly, by little notes that we would write, or at meetings, or one-to-one, in person talking. Or on the telephone when that happened. Good night, Alaska. Contacting, okay, good night, Toya, okay. Yeah, I know the feeling. I think it's about time for me to close anyway. 5 o'clock in the morning where I am, which is normal for me. I've been staying until 6 almost every night in the last week. Fortunately, I get to retire. I got to retire a few years ago, and so even though it's a struggle financially, but I've been able to do okay. For the remaining 3 individuals, I guess if you don't all have any questions or anything, if there's still somebody actually paying attention to what I'm saying, I'm going to make it a night, even though I wanted to get back to more of the prophecy, but it's okay. I think there were some good things. I hope so. So I'm going to close down as we approach the 3rd hour, and be talking to you again, I hope, sometime. But if not, then I think reach for the highest source you can reach for help for any situation. And then look for the clues of that help, which the next level will give you. They don't talk to you like a voice in your head. I mean, it's not that they can't, but we just can't trust that. We can't trust dreams, because the Luciferian space aliens can use them, Discarnates can use them. You can't trust what other people say about this. A lot of people that we talk about this with will think it's total baloney and evil even. And so it's, but the job is to stand up for them if we want to take it. Stand up for Tian-Do as the creator, from the kingdom that created the earth and all the life forms on the earth. And stand up for them, and then maintain that stand, not just one stand. It's not like saying I'm born again and now I'm in the door. No, you got to maintain the stand. That's the overriding requirement for being saved for a future opportunity. And I'm not doing this to be saved. I'm doing it because I can't help not doing it, because I believe in it all. What the next level does with my soul, I don't know. I'm not equipped to say. I don't think they'll throw me away, because Do told me that before I left, that I had the makings of a good next level member, is what he told me. And so I don't think they would have helped me get back on the track if I was throwawayable. But I could go downhill from here and be throwawayable for all I know. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope I have enough sense to, if that approaches me in some way, I hope I have enough sense to ask for help right away and receive the help by my choices. The choices aren't easy when we ask for help. They don't want to make it easy, because they don't. They only have so many positions they offer at any given moment. At any given graduation. So we have to be taught, and we have to exercise the effort to learn. And a big part of that effort is getting to know everything Tian-Do taught, because we can't you know, we can't stand for them as well if we don't know what they taught. And standing for them in front of Christians, I think is handy to know what Jesus taught and what's in the book of Revelations about Tiendo. And so that we are engaged in the process towards the next level if we are proceeding in that direction. You don't get it, it doesn't happen all at once. It's all in degrees of getting rid of the old mind and taking in a new mind. And the more you talk about it, actually, and the more you write about it and think about it, the more you're actually opening up your mind to receiving more from the next level, which would draw you to looking at the information more and then seeing more in the information, seeing how it makes more sense than anything else. More and more. So I hope that we get to talk about this again, if it's in the mind of Tiendo for that to happen. Good night.